when Richard Harrington, one of the most talked-about millionaires in New York, invited his circle of elite friends to an exclusive dinner. No one expected a scandal that would grip the city by sunrise. Yet under the shimmering chandeliers, a single ring on the wrong finger sparked a chain reaction of secrets, betrayal, and desperate cover-ups. In a room full of the who's who, his mistress brazenly wore a dazzling heirloom meant only for his wife. Within hours, accusations flew, alliances shattered, and legal charges loomed. Prepare yourself for a tale of forbidden love, lavish wealth, and a scandal so big it dragged everyone into court the very next day. Richard Harrington was the embodiment of Manhattan prestige, a real estate mogul with holdings from luxury penthouses to global hotel stakes. At 52, his commanding looks, tailored suits, and signature Dalmore 62 whiskey only added to his mystique. People in high society either envied him, feared him, or both. His wife, Anna Harrington, was equally captivating. Raised in Connecticut high society, Anna brought an air of timeless class and influence. Known for her charitable efforts in education and healthcare, she carried with her a legacy of elegance and quiet power. Among her most prized possessions was a diamond ring, an heirloom from her late mother, rumored to be a 19th-century Tiffany design. It wasn't just jewelry, it was history. Behind closed doors, though, the Harrington marriage was fractured. Whispers of Richard's infidelity had floated through social circles for years. He was often away on business, while Anna kept the illusion intact with grace and poise. The gossip grew louder when a new name entered the scene. Sophie Caldwell. Sophie, a striking redhead in her early 30s, had built a modest career as an interior designer. Through her friend Emily Rivera, CEO of a startup backed by Richard, she landed a contract with Harrington's firm. It wasn't long before their professional relationship turned personal, sparking rumors of romantic getaways and stolen moments. Anna received a blurry photo via anonymous text Richard and Sophie close at a beach bar in Miami. Confronting him, she was met with vehement denials. He called it a setup. Anna, bound by pride, chose to believe him, or at least to act as if she did. But in the days leading up to an important charity dinner at their penthouse, Anna couldn't ignore the shift. Richard was distracted, more attached to his phone than to her. Her suspicions deepened, and she resolved that if Sophie appeared at their event, despite not being on the guest list, she would no longer remain silent. The dinner was more than a lavish fundraiser. It was a line in the sand. Anna planned to wear her mother's treasured ring, a silent declaration of legacy and control. What she didn't know was that this night meant to affirm her place would instead unravel everything. She wasn't just hosting a glamorous event. She was walking into a reckoning. The day of the dinner arrived with unseasonably warm weather for early spring. Staff hurried in and out of the Harrington penthouse, prepping for the event. Gourmet catering trucks parked out front, offloading fresh ingredients. Florists brought in exotic blooms, orchids, lilies, and roses arranged in grand centerpieces. A string quartet rehearsed discreetly in a side room, their music setting a tone of refined elegance. Anna Harrington oversaw the final preparations, meticulously checking seating charts, ensuring the correct vintage of champagne was chilled, and adjusting the angle of each flower arrangement. She had always been particular about the ring she wore for such events. Typically, Anna selected a piece from her mother's collection that complemented her outfit as tradition and sentimentality dictated. Tonight, however, she intended to wear the ring, the storied diamond from Charles Louis Tiffany's early designs. She hoped its glittering presence would symbolize her unwavering stance in the face of adversity. She stepped into her walk-in closet an expansive room with vaulted ceilings and polished wooden drawers. On one side were racks of dresses, each a testament to her refined taste. On the other were rows of drawers containing her jewelry. She opened the velvet-lined case and expected to see her prized ring glistening in its usual spot. But it wasn't there. Alarmed, Anna searched through every corner, pulling out one drawer after another. Panic gnawed at her stomach. Her mother's ring. The ring was missing. Anna's first instinct was to confront Richard. Perhaps he had borrowed it for some reason, or maybe he had taken it to be cleaned or reset, though he would have surely told her. Leaving the closet in disarray, Anna found him in his office rummaging through documents, phone in hand. "Richard," she said softly but with urgency, "have you seen my mother's ring? The one I keep in the top drawer." Richard looked up, confusion creasing his brow. "No, I haven't touched your jewelry," he replied, placing his phone screen down on the desk. "Why would I? I've been busy with finalizing tonight's guest list and the charity auction items." He paused, sensing Anna's distress. "Are you sure you didn't misplace it?" Anna's anxiety flared. "It's not misplaced. It's always in the same spot. Always, Richard." "I can't find it anywhere." He stood up, concern etched on his face. For all his recent betrayals, real or suspected, Richard seemed genuinely worried. "We have staff in and out all day. Anyone could have seen the case open and taken it." But even as he spoke the words, his eyes flickered with something fear, perhaps, or guilt. Anna scoured his expression. She was desperate to know if he was lying, if the missing ring had anything to do with Sophie Caldwell. The thought was so outrageous that she forced it out of her mind. No matter how brazen an affair might be, surely not even Sophie would dare to steal a ring. It was too personal, too significant. And yet a seed of suspicion was planted. As evening approached, Anna decided there was no use frantically searching any further. She had a dinner to host and a ring to locate discreetly. If she didn't keep her composure, tongues would wag and rumors would swirl. So she chose a simpler piece of jewelry, a pearl necklace, and went on to greet the arriving guests with a poised smile that concealed her turmoil. Attendees trickled in, wearing the finest couture, each trying to outshine the next. Among the notables were Bill Thompson, a billionaire hedge fund manager; Dr. Samantha Lee, a high-profile cosmetic surgeon with celebrity clientele; and James Reynolds, an entertainment mogul, fresh from signing a blockbuster deal with Netflix. The event promised to be a tapestry of glamour, wealth, and ambition. The moment the butler announced Ms. Sophie Caldwell, the room seemed to tighten. Anna looked up, her heart pounding as Sophie entered, dressed in a sleek black gown that clung to her figure. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Some recognized her from interior design magazines, others only by reputation. She wore a radiant smile and mingled easily, her face betraying no sign of unease. Anna stole covert glances at Richard, whose face registered surprise at Sophie's presence. Or perhaps it was a carefully rehearsed expression. He went to greet her, his arm brushing her elbow in a show of cordiality. Observing them from across the room, Anna's stomach twisted with suspicion. She prayed Sophie had nothing to do with the missing ring, even though a new and unsettling thought crossed her mind. Could Richard have given it to her? The tension only escalated. Within minutes, Anna made her way around the room, exchanging polite pleasantries with donors and acquaintances. Yet her gaze kept drifting toward Sophie. As Sophie turned to pick up a glass of champagne from a silver tray, the overhead crystal chandelier caught a dazzling flash of light from the ring on her finger. Anna froze mid-sentence, her breath caught in her throat. She recognized it instantly, The shape, the cut, the antique setting. It was her mother's ring, the one that was missing from her drawer that very afternoon. Anna's eyes widened, and the color drained from her face. She could barely hear the person she was speaking with. Everything else in the room seemed to vanish in that moment. Sophie turned slightly, and the ring glinted again under the light, unmistakable in its craftsmanship and brilliance. The audacity was staggering. Not only was Sophie brazenly wearing the ring, but she was doing so at Anna's own dinner party. In that explosive second, Anna realized there would be no civil resolution. Whatever fragile facade she and Richard had been holding on to was about to shatter. The only question was how and when. Anna felt as if an earthquake were tearing through her composure. Around her, tuxedoed men and bejeweled women traded small talk over canapes, while a classical quartet played in the background. Yet all she could focus on was the ring on Sophie Caldwell's finger. Her ring. Her beloved mother's ring. Pulse-hammering, Anna maneuvered through the throng, gently excusing herself from conversations, her single-minded purpose to confront Sophie. She felt a surreal detachment, as if watching herself from a distance. She recalled how, as a child, her mother would wear the ring during special family events, whispering tales of its history. It was a piece that encapsulated love, tradition, and family pride. Now it sat mocking her on the hand of her husband's rumored mistress. Sophie was busy charming a group of potential clients, her stance confident, her laughter bright. Anna took a moment to steel herself. She had a choice: create a scene in front of everyone, or handle it quietly. Common sense told her to avoid public humiliation, but her anger urged her otherwise. "Excuse me," Anna said icily, sliding between Sophie and the others. Her tone alone caused the small group to step aside. Sophie looked up and met Anna's gaze, a momentary flicker of nervousness crossing her face. "Anna, hello," Sophie greeted, attempting a polite smile. Anna kept her voice level, but laced with steel. "I need to speak with you, privately." Sophie nodded, her eyes darting to the ring, as if suddenly aware of the tension in Anna's stare. They moved to a side corridor, near an ornate table topped with fresh roses. Soft candlelight illuminated their faces, highlighting the contrast between Anna's barely contained fury and Sophie's forced poise. Without preamble, Anna said, "Where did you get that ring?" Sophie glanced at her hand and feigned innocence. It's a gift." Anna felt her temper flare, but she held it in check. "A gift from whom?" "Because that ring belongs to me." Sophie parted her lips, trying to maintain her composure. "Richard gave it to me," she said quietly. "He told me it was an heirloom he wanted me to have to wear for tonight's event." Anna's voice trembled with outrage. "He had no right to give you that ring. It's not his to give. It's mine, my mother's, and it's priceless." Sophie avoided eye contact. For a moment, she seemed genuinely uncomfortable. I didn't know. Richard said it was a gesture, something to show his commitment to me." She trailed off, her cheeks flushing. The implications hit Anna like a blow to the chest. Not only was Richard unfaithful, but he had the audacity to gift his mistress the very ring that symbolized his marital bond with Anna's family legacy. The betrayal was layered, intimate, and utterly humiliating. "I want it back," Anna said in a measured tone that belied her internal chaos. "Now!" Sophie hesitated, tears gathering in her eyes. "Anna, I'm sorry." If I had known Anna cut her off, her dignity clinging by a thread. "Save your apologies. Just hand it over." With trembling fingers, Sophie slipped the ring off, placing it in Anna's palm. The relief Anna felt was momentarily eclipsed by the raw fury roiling within. She realized belatedly that she had made a decision just by confronting Sophie. There would be no more covering for Richard, no more maintaining a polite, public face. This was war. As Anna gripped the ring, her mind reeled with questions. Had Richard really stolen it from her drawer? Or had he lied to Sophie, saying it was an extra piece of jewelry he could freely offer? She felt sick thinking about the level of betrayal. Sophie seemed small in that moment, stripped of her earlier bravado. "Anna, he lied to me too. He told me you knew we were seeing each other, that your marriage was just for show for the business. He said you'd be relieved once Anna's glare stopped her." She raised a hand to silence Sophie. Her lips set in a grim line. She needed no further details about the depths of Richard's manipulations tonight. There would be plenty of time for revelations later. At that moment, footsteps echoed in the corridor. Richard appeared, concern etched on his face. He must have sensed the electricity in the air, or overheard someone talking about the clash. Spotting the ring in Anna's hand, he paled. "What's going on?" he demanded, gaze shifting between the two women. Anna turned to him. Her anger sharpened into an icy blade. "You have the nerve to ask that, after you gave her my ring." Sophie backed away, her eyes brimming with tears, looking overwhelmed. Richard tried to step closer to Anna, but she put up a hand as if warding off a venomous snake. "You stole from me," Anna spat, "and you gave it to your mistress. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is?" Richard opened his mouth to respond, but faltered, unable to conjure a plausible explanation. "Anna, please, let's not do this here." "Oh, believe me, Richard, we will do this here. You set the stage for public humiliation. It's only fitting we finish it this way." She paused, the ring clutched so tightly in her hand that it pressed into her skin. "I want every single person in this room to know the truth." Panic flickered in Richard's eyes. For all his power, reputation was still everything. "Not now," he pleaded, lowering his voice. "We'll talk about it later, just you and me. I swear." Anna cast a quick glance at Sophie, who stood on the sidelines looking ready to flee. Then she refocused on Richard. "No. I've had enough of pretending. I'm done." Before he could stop her, Anna spun on her heel and headed back toward the main ballroom, ring in hand. The lull in music was perfectly timed. The quartet had paused between pieces. Anna lifted her chin, scanning the faces of the assembled guests. Striding to the center of the room, she spoke loudly, voice reverberating with righteous fury. "Ladies and gentlemen, I must apologize for this interruption, but there's a matter I need to address immediately." Her gaze darted around, capturing every startled look. "I'm sorry to inform you that this evening's event is cancelled. If you'd kindly collect your coats and donations at the door, please exit in an orderly fashion. There has been a betrayal in this house that I cannot allow to remain hidden any longer." A stunned hush fell over the crowd. Richard stood behind her, face ashen, unsure whether to step in or remain silent. Sophie lingered in the shadow of the corridor, tears streaking her cheeks. Anna concluded, her voice breaking slightly. "Once again, I offer my sincerest apologies. You will all receive a formal explanation soon. But for now, I ask you to leave." In an instant, the mood turned chaotic. Confused murmurs rippled through the gathering. Some guests, sensing scandal, hurried for the exits, while others hovered, trying to glean bits of gossip. Paparazzi, who had been stationed outside, might have overheard the commotion cameras, ready to capture the meltdown of a powerful family. Amid the swirl of confusion, Anna locked eyes with Richard. "There in front of everyone," she said in a voice trembling with betrayal. "How could you do this to me?" And just like that, the facade of the Harringtons' perfect marriage crumbled. The morning after the dinner was a whirlwind of phone calls, scandalized gossip and incriminations. Headlines on society blogs and social media platforms blared, "A diamond affair. Harrington Gala ends in disgrace." Speculative articles ran wild, some blaming Anna for overreacting, others painting Sophie as a conniving homewrecker, and still others insinuating that Richard had orchestrated the entire drama for reasons unknown. Inside the Harrington penthouse, the atmosphere was as bleak as it was silent. Anna barely slept. She had retreated to a guest room, locked the door, and sobbed into her pillow until the early hours of dawn. In the morning, she emerged to find a miserable-looking Richard in the kitchen phone glued to his ear. He was in hushed conversation with Daniel Kirkwood, his attorney friend. "Daniel, I need you to handle the fallout," Richard said, voice low. "I don't care what it takes. I can't have this overshadowing my business deals." Anna could hardly believe his priorities. He was more concerned about business deals than the devastation he had wrought. She found her own phone buzzing with messages, some from concerned friends like Emily Rivera, others from opportunists seeking a statement. She ignored all but one call from her personal attorney, Sarah Lovelace. "Anna, I saw the news. Are you all right?" Sarah's voice was calm yet urgent. "No, not really." Anna admitted, tears stinging her eyes anew. "This is worse than anything I could have imagined. And now I need to protect myself. Richard's been lying for God knows how long, and I can't trust him anymore." Sarah's tone turned businesslike. "Then we should discuss your options. Divorce property, settlements, any potential legal steps you can take regarding that ring. Did you recover it safely?" Anna nodded, even though Sarah couldn't see her. "Yes, I have it, but the humiliation is unbearable. I just want to make sure I'm not left vulnerable." "We'll make sure of that," Sarah said firmly. "Just keep all communication with Richard civil, and document everything." After she hung up, Anna realized she was trembling. The prospect of a public divorce loomed large. She envisioned the headlines, the rumors, the dissection of her every move. Still, she couldn't imagine staying with Richard after his egregious betrayal. Shortly afterward, she confronted him in the living room. He'd ended his call with Daniel looking beleaguered, but defiant. "Anna," he began, voice thick with regret. "I know you have every right to be furious. I messed up. I should never have touched your ring. I thought—" She cut him off. "You thought what?" "That you could gift it to your mistress without me noticing that you'd get away with it. I don't know what's worse, your infidelity or your sheer stupidity." He exhaled heavily. "I was going to buy you another ring. I planned on returning the heirloom after the dinner. It was a ridiculous idea, but Sophie insisted she wanted something special to wear." And he stopped, seemingly aware that every word only condemned him further. Anna felt a renewed surge of anger. "You're telling me she insisted she wear my mother's ring, and you just agreed? You keep digging yourself a deeper hole, Richard." He pressed his fingers to his temples. "I'll fix this," he said quietly. "We can handle it internally. Get the press to back off. And—" Anna scoffed, stifling a bitter laugh. "No, you created this mess, and now I'm supposed to just fix it with you like a loyal partner?" She shook her head, heartbreak evident in her eyes. I spoke to Sarah Lovelace. She's drafting the initial paperwork for a divorce. I want you out of this apartment. Richard's eyes flashed with alarm. Anna, don't do this. I realize how it looks, but it's not what you think. Sophie Anna held up a hand. Stop. I don't want to hear her name again. Just then the doorbell rang. They both turned, startled. In the hallway stood two uniformed police officers, accompanied by a woman in a tailored grey suit. The woman introduced herself as Detective Maria Alvarez from the NYPD's Financial Crimes Division. Mr. Harrington. Mrs. Harrington, she said, flashing her badge. We have a warrant to search the premises in connection with a complaint filed this morning regarding stolen property and potential fraud. Anna's heart nearly stopped. Fraud, she echoed. Richard shot a panicked look at her. This has to be some mistake. Who filed this complaint? Detective Alvarez consulted a folder in her hand. A Ms. Sophie Caldwell reported that you gave her a stolen ring to wear at last night's event. She claims she was unaware it was stolen and only realized the next day that you had taken it from your wife without permission. She's pressed charges. Anna's jaw dropped. But the ring is mine. It's not stolen property. I have it right here. Alvarez raised an eyebrow. According to the complaint, Mr. Harrington was not authorized to remove the ring from a safe deposit box or from your private collection. Ms. Caldwell states that as soon as she learned the ring wasn't Mr. Harrington's to give, she sought legal counsel. They're alleging potential fraud, since the ring might be considered communal marital property under dispute, plus there's a question of whether Ms. Caldwell accepted it under false pretenses. Richard's face drained of color. This is insane. I didn't steal the ring. Anna is my wife. Everything in this apartment is ours. Anna's voice was shaky. That ring was my mother's. It was passed down to me years before I even met Richard. It's not communal property. It's mine alone. Alvarez nodded. We'll need to see documentation appraisals, any proof you have. In the meantime, we are legally required to conduct a search for any other items that may be in dispute. Flabbergasted. Anna stepped aside as the officers began to spread out through the penthouse. She could hardly believe Sophie Caldwell had gone to the police, already seemingly trying to protect herself by painting Richard as a thief. The turn of events was dizzying. Richard stood, rigid, fists clenched, fury and panic warring in his eyes. Sophie must be trying to cover her tracks, he muttered under his breath. I gave her that ring voluntarily. How can she say it was stolen property? Anna wanted to retort that he had no right to give it away in the first place, but she was too shocked to speak. Instead, she watched as Detective Alvarez gathered statements, took photos, and asked for any documentation regarding the ring's provenance. Anna produced the original receipt and letter of inheritance from her mother's estate. The detective scanned them carefully. This should help clarify ownership, she said. But I still need to bring Mr. Harrington in for questioning regarding Ms. Caldwell's complaint. We'll need to ascertain whether there's any intent to commit fraud or if Mrs. Caldwell had any complicity. Richard stared at Anna, silently begging for her intervention. She swallowed hard, a maelstrom of emotions swirling inside her. Anger, heartbreak, disbelief. He had betrayed her, but the sight of him possibly facing arrest was still jarring. May I speak to my lawyer first? Richard asked. Certainly, Detective Alvarez replied. But we will need your cooperation. We can do this at the station, or if you prefer, we can schedule a time as soon as possible. However, you're officially under investigation. Anna said nothing as Richard frantically dialed Daniel Kirkwood. The officers left with a promise to return if any further evidence was required, while Detective Alvarez gave them both a business card. Once the door closed, Anna felt a wave of exhaustion crash over her. Everything was spiraling out of control: her marriage, her reputation, and now the law was involved. She sank into a chair and touched the ring still warm from being held in her palm. She stared at its brilliance, recalling childhood memories of her mother's laughter. How had a symbol of enduring love become the centerpiece of such betrayal and legal chaos? The next day, a flurry of media speculations erupted. Anna was bombarded with sympathetic messages, while Richard's phone likely buzzed with outraged queries. But behind the headlines, Sophie Caldwell was living her own nightmare. Or at least that was how she portrayed it, in a teary interview with a local tabloid reporter, Alison Monroe, known for her sensational exposés. Sophie sat in the living room of her modest apartment, far removed from the opulent penthouse of the Harringtons. The space was tastefully decorated, showcasing her flair for design, subdued earth tones, modern art pieces and plush rugs. Yet there was a stark contrast between the refined interior and the emotional turmoil she was experiencing. A camera crew from Cityscope Daily had been allowed in for an exclusive interview. I didn't know Sophie insisted, tears rimming her eyes. Richard told me the ring was his to give. He said it was from his personal safe, and he wanted me to wear it at the dinner because it symbolized our future together. Alison Monroe leaned forward, her expression a blend of sympathy and professional curiosity. "And you had no idea it belonged to Mrs. Harrington?" Sophie shook her head, a wave of red curls bouncing around her shoulders. "No, not at all. Richard had always told me that his marriage was basically in name only, that Anna knew about me, that she in fact was supportive of him finding companionship. It sounds naive, but I believed him." She sniffled, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. I should have asked more questions, but I was in love. Or at least I thought I was. The camera panned around the room, capturing Sophie's distress. For the viewers who tuned in, she appeared as a victim led astray by a powerful man's lies. Whether her tears were genuine or carefully orchestrated was a matter of debate. "What made you decide to press charges?" Alison asked pointedly. Sophie inhaled shakily. "Once Anna demanded the ring back, and I realized it was a family heirloom. I was horrified. Then my attorney advised me that if I had knowingly worn stolen property, I could be implicated. I needed to protect myself legally. I didn't want to go to the police, but I had no choice." Alison nodded, flipping through her notes. "There are rumors that you and Mr. Harrington were seen in Miami, Aspen, and even overseas. People have speculated you were more than just a casual fling." Sophie looked away, seemingly embarrassed. "I was under the impression we were building a life together. He promised me the world travel business opportunities. Everything. He said we'd announce our relationship publicly once his divorce from Anna was finalized. But clearly, he never intended to go through with any of it." "I see," Alison said carefully. "So you felt betrayed as well?" Sophie nodded. "Yes, completely. I'm not proud of my relationship with a married man, but I truly believed that it was consensual in the sense that Anna was aware and didn't object. I see now how foolish I was." The interview concluded with Sophie issuing a tearful apology to Anna, claiming she never meant to hurt her or cause a scandal. The cameras captured every emotional flicker, from remorse to indignation. Outside Sophie's apartment, her publicist Carmen Woods coordinated with the press to shape the narrative that Sophie was yet another victim of Richard Harrington's manipulations. Meanwhile, private investigators hired by Richard's attorney began digging into Sophie's financial records, looking for any sign of extortion or blackmail attempts. In the swirl of contrasting stories, public opinion was sharply divided. Some labeled Sophie a shameless gold digger who had enticed Richard for financial gain. Others saw her as a young woman seduced by a powerful, manipulative mogul. Anna gained sympathy as the wronged wife, but even she was not immune to cynics who questioned why she had tolerated Richard's affair for so long. Richard himself was portrayed as the antagonist, a wealthy, entitled man who believed he could have his cake and eat it too. Behind the headlines, Sophie tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy. She still had clients to answer to, projects to complete. But with paparazzi camped outside her building, she found it nearly impossible to continue her interior design work. She also grappled with the knowledge that pressing charges against Richard opened her to scrutiny. If the police found any evidence that Sophie had known about the ring's origins, she could be charged with conspiracy or receiving stolen property. One evening, Emily Rivera, her friend who had first introduced her to Richard, came by to check on her. Emily was torn between loyalty to Sophie and a sense of guilt for unwittingly setting this whole drama in motion. "This is a mess," Emily whispered, holding Sophie's hand. "Are you absolutely sure you want to follow through with this legal action? Richard is powerful and he won't hesitate to fight back hard." Sophie's expression was resolute. "I don't have a choice. He gave me stolen property. Even if I didn't know it was stolen, I'm responsible. This is self-preservation." Emily nodded, though uncertainty clouded her features. "Just be ready for the backlash. Richard can ruin your reputation more than he already has. And Anna, she's furious." Sophie lowered her gaze. "I deserve her fury. But this is the only way I can protect myself, Emily. I never wanted it to go this far. Yet it had gone that far, and the legal machinery was now in motion." Sophie had cast her die, positioning herself as a woman deceived, filing complaints to shield herself. Richard was left to scramble for defense, and Anna sought restitution and retribution in her own way. The stage was set for a battle that would leave no one unscathed. The days leading up to Sophie Caldwell's court appearance were a maelstrom of legal strategizing, backroom deals, and intense media coverage. Every law firm worth its name in Manhattan seemed to have an opinion or a stake in the unfolding drama. Gossip columns feasted on the scandal, speculating about hush-money settlements and clandestine meetings. Anna Harrington spent most of her time at her lawyer's office. Sarah Lovelace, a sharp-witted attorney with a reputation for being both empathetic and relentless, advised Anna to keep media interactions to a minimum. The only statement Anna released publicly was a concise note confirming that the ring belonged solely to her, that it had been returned safely, and that she was cooperating fully with the authorities. But Anna's nights were restless. She wrestled with conflicting emotions: anger at Richard's betrayal, shame at being part of a public spectacle, and a lingering sadness for the loss of a life she once cherished. The ring itself felt tainted now. Once a cherished heirloom, it was now the epicenter of heartbreak. Meanwhile, Richard was in full damage control mode with Daniel Kirkwood. They pored over financial documents, phone records, and text messages, trying to piece together a defense that would paint Sophie as a willing accomplice. Richard insisted he had never stolen the ring, that as Anna's husband, he had access to it and the right to lend it to whomever he wished. Daniel, however, warned him that marital property laws could be murky, especially concerning inherited assets and emotional heirlooms. "What if we just settle this quietly?" Richard asked one afternoon, slumping in a leather chair in Daniel's sleek midtown office. Daniel rubbed his temples. "Sophie's complaint is criminal, not just civil. She's accusing you of giving her stolen property. To drop the charges, she'd have to recant her statement or the DA's office would have to dismiss the case for lack of evidence. Are you suggesting paying Sophie off? Richard stared out the window at the Manhattan skyline. I'm not above it if it means avoiding a humiliating court battle. Daniel's lips formed a tight line. We can explore negotiations, but she might already be in too deep. And if it looks like bribery, we could end up with additional charges. So Richard had no choice but to prepare for the possibility of defending himself in court. He felt the weight of public opinion pressing down on him, along with the knowledge that Anna's divorce case was picking up steam. His empire, once seemingly invincible, now teetered under the threat of scandal. Sophie, on the other hand, was equally busy with her legal counsel, Martin Wells. He was a young, ambitious attorney, eager to make a name for himself by taking on a high-profile case. He coached Sophie on how to answer questions regarding her relationship with Richard, emphasizing her claim that she was unaware the ring belonged to Anna. She was not the perpetrator Martin insisted, but a victim of a powerful man's deception. Sophie's life became a whirlwind of depositions and paparazzi-laden exits from her building. Each time she walked down the sidewalk, flashbulbs popped and tabloid reporters hurled questions. Did you know the ring was stolen? Are you seeking a settlement? Is there another scandal you're hiding? She remained tight-lipped, except for a few carefully orchestrated statements that Martin prepared. In them, she reasserted her innocence and placed the blame squarely on Richard. As the court date approached, tensions escalated. Private investigators for both sides uncovered fragments of information that each party hoped to use as leverage photos of Sophie and Richard on luxury yachts, text messages referencing our special ring, and flight records that placed them together in exotic locales. Anna received a subpoena to testify about the ring's ownership and the circumstances surrounding its discovery on Sophie's finger. The thought of standing in a courtroom facing the woman who wore her mother's ring made Anna nauseous. She detested the prospect of turning her private heartbreak into public testimony, yet she was determined to see justice done. The day before the hearing, Anna tried to gather her composure in her penthouse, now mostly empty as she had asked Richard to move into a hotel until divorce proceedings concluded. She sipped herbal tea in the solarium, gazing out at the city lights. Her phone pinged with a text from her lifelong friend, Olivia Branson. I'm thinking of you. You're strong. Don't let them break you. Anna took a deep breath and allowed a small smile. She wasn't alone, despite the swirling chaos. Determination settled over her like a shield. She couldn't control what the public thought, but she could control her own voice, her own truth. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows of the courthouse, illuminating the tense faces of those gathered. The corridor buzzed with media personnel attorneys, hurriedly flipping through briefs and onlookers, eager for a glimpse of the scandal's key players. Security was tight, given the high-profile nature of the case. At exactly 10 o'clock, the bailiff opened the double doors to courtroom 12B. Sophie Caldwell arrived first, flanked by Martin Wells and a small entourage that included her publicist Carmen Woods. She wore a conservative black suit and minimal makeup, projecting an image of seriousness and contrition. Next came Richard Harrington, accompanied by Daniel Kirkwood. Cameras flashed wildly through the glass partition, capturing the millionaire with a somber expression. Richard had chosen a navy blue suit, and his shoulders appeared weighed down by stress. Anna entered last, walking alongside Sarah Lovelace. She held her head high, exuding quiet strength, despite the turmoil roiling inside her. She took a seat behind the prosecution's table as she was called as a witness. The judge, an older woman named Judge Marina Goldstein, took her seat on the bench and surveyed the room. "Court is now in session," the bailiff announced. "Case number 5482, the State of New York versus Richard Harrington." The prosecutor, Assistant District Attorney Ellen Pierce, rose. She was known for her methodical and relentless style. "Your Honor, this case concerns an accusation of possession of stolen property and the transfer of that property to a third party under false pretenses." Daniel Kirkwood stood to respond. "The defense contends that Mr. Harrington had lawful access to the property in question. There was no theft, no intent to commit fraud. We request the charges be dismissed." Judge Goldstein's gaze swept over both parties. "Noted. Let's proceed with opening statements." Assistant D.A. Pierce gave a concise overview describing how Richard Harrington took an heirloom ring belonging solely to Anna Harrington and gave it to Sophie Caldwell without permission. She emphasized how the ring was inherited by Anna prior to marriage, thus remaining her personal property under New York law. Pierce painted a picture of Richard misrepresenting his rights to the ring, causing Sophie to unwittingly wear stolen property. When Daniel Kirkwood rose, he began by challenging the notion that Anna's inheritance was indisputably separate. The ring was kept in a shared safe, accessible to both Mr. and Mrs. Harrington. Mr. Harrington believed he had every right to allow Miss Caldwell to wear it for a social function. There was no theft, merely a misunderstanding of ownership. The judge nodded, scribbling notes. "We'll hear evidence regarding the ring's legal status. Let's call the first witness." Anna was summoned to the stand. She took a moment to steady her breath before sitting in the witness box and swearing to tell the truth. ADA Pierce led the questioning, asking Anna about her inheritance, her emotional attachment to the ring, and the night she discovered Sophie wearing it. Anna recounted the story with quiet dignity, occasionally pausing to gather herself. She provided appraisals, her mother's will and documentation showing the ring was gifted solely to her. Then came cross-examination. Daniel Kirkwood approached carefully, trying not to appear overly aggressive. He asked Anna about the shared property arrangements she and Richard had, implying that items in the penthouse were jointly accessible. Anna maintained that the ring had never been part of the marriage's communal property. It was stored separately in her personal jewelry case. Kirkwood's voice took on a pointed edge. "But Mrs. Harrington, you didn't keep this ring in a safe deposit box at a bank, correct? You kept it at home in a place Mr. Harrington could access. Is that not right?" Anna frowned. "There is a difference between physically accessing something and having the legal right to give it away." Richard did not have the latter. Satisfied he had planted doubt, Kirkwood returned to his seat. Anna felt a mixture of relief and lingering anxiety. Next, Sophie Caldwell was called to testify. Martin Wells guided her through her story, her relationship with Richard, how he'd presented the ring, and her immediate decision to contact the police once she realized it wasn't his to give. She appeared subdued and remorseful, emphasizing her claim that she was deceived by Richard's assurances. During cross-examination, Daniel Kirkwood tried to pick holes in Sophie's narrative, highlighting the lavish gifts and vacations she had enjoyed at Richard's expense. "Isn't it true," he pressed, "that you accepted numerous high-value items from Mr. Harrington before this ring incident? How is this different?" Sophie looked down, wringing her hands. This was the first time it turned out to be stolen. Kirkwood cut her off, earning a reprimand from Judge Goldstein. "Let the witness finish." Sophie swallowed. "I never thought those other gifts were anything but legitimately his to give. He told me he was wealthy, that he had access to many assets. I had no reason to doubt him." Kirkwood shifted tactics. "Ms. Caldwell, how did you know to contact the police so quickly?" Were you not worried about the publicity this might attract? Sophie took a moment before answering, her eyes flickering toward the assembled reporters. Once Mrs. Harrington confronted me, I panicked. I spoke to a lawyer first. He advised me to go to the police immediately, or I could be charged myself. Kirkwood let out a frustrated sigh and ended his cross-examination. Finally, the defense called Richard Harrington to the stand. He took a deep breath, stepping up with the confidence of a man used to boardroom battles. Yet this was different. Here the personal collided with the professional under the harsh glare of legal scrutiny. Under Daniel's questioning, Richard gave a carefully rehearsed statement. I believed I could lend the ring to Miss Caldwell. It was a spontaneous decision. I planned on returning it to my wife's jewelry box immediately after the event. I never intended to claim permanent ownership or deprive Anna of it. That was not theft. It was a poor decision, yes, but not a crime. He also portrayed Sophie as someone who understood the ring was part of the Harrington household. Sophie knew our marriage was on the rocks. I told her I'd handle the ring's transfer properly later. This was supposed to be a symbolic gesture, not a permanent gift. Ada, Pierce's cross-examination was relentless, focusing on the emotional weight of the ring and the fact that Richard had not consulted Anna. Mr. Harrington, how can you claim it was a mere symbolic gesture when you never informed your wife, the ring's legal owner, of your plan? Richard visibly squirmed. I was going to tell Anna after the event, once she saw that my relationship with Sophie was something I intended to formalize. The courtroom erupted in hushed murmurs at his frank admission of an affair. So you decided on your own that you had the right to take and lend a ring that you knew was your wife's prized heirloom. Is that correct? Pierce pressed. Richard hesitated. I believed that as her husband, it wasn't an issue to temporarily use an item from our shared household, even if the item was inherited before your marriage. Pierce's voice sharpened. That detail is crucial, Mr. Harrington. Richard stumbled through an explanation, but the damage was done. His testimony made it clear that he hadn't properly considered the ring's legal status. The lines between personal entitlement and rightful ownership were blurred, but they seemed to tilt in favor of Anna's claim that it was hers alone. Judge Goldstein adjourned for the day, announcing she would consider the testimonies overnight and rule the following morning on whether sufficient grounds existed to proceed with a full trial, or to possibly settle the matter in a plea arrangement or dismissal. The tension in the room was palpable, as everyone filed out, uncertain of what new twist might arise. When court reconvened the next morning, the atmosphere was charged with anticipation. Would the judge decide there was enough evidence to go to trial, or would she dismiss the case as a marital dispute blown out of proportion? Judge Goldstein entered, her expression inscrutable. After calling the courtroom to order, she wasted no time. I have reviewed the evidence and testimony. It is clear that the ring in question was inherited by Mrs. Harrington, making it her personal property. Harrington's unilateral decision to lend it without her consent raises serious legal concerns. However, the matter of intent, whether Mr. Harrington knowingly committed theft or simply exercised poor judgment, remains debatable. She paused, letting her words settle. Given the complexities, I'm inclined to set this case for trial, so that a jury can examine the nuances of marital property law versus inherited property law, unless the parties can come to a mutually acceptable resolution. Does the state have any preference? ADA. Pierce stood. Your Honor, the prosecution is open to a plea agreement if Mr. Harrington will accept responsibility and meet certain conditions. Daniel Kirkwood quickly asked for a brief recess to confer with his client. The judge consented, and the parties huddled in the hallway. Richard Daniel said quietly, "If you go to trial, we risk a public spectacle. The DA might even uncover other questionable financial dealings. This could escalate. If they offer a deal that avoids prison time, we might want to take it." Richard's jaw clenched. "I can't plead guilty to something I didn't do." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Richard, you admitted you took the ring without telling Anna. Legally, that's theft if we can't prove you had the right to do so. The best we can do is mitigate the consequences." Nearby ADA. Pierce approached with a proposition. "Mr. Harrington pleads no contest to a lesser charge, unauthorized use of property, and pays a substantial fine. Additionally, any settlement with Ms. Caldwell is between them, but the state's case can be resolved." Richard looked to Anna, who stood a few feet away, listening with Sarah Lovelace. She locked eyes with him, making it clear she had no sympathy left. Then he glanced at Sophie, who hovered uncertainly by her attorney. She offered him no support, her gaze fixed on the floor. A swirl of conflicting emotions churned inside him. Anger, betrayal, regret, fear. He had built his empire on taking calculated risks. But this risk had backfired. He sighed, shoulders sagging. "Fine," he muttered. "Let's do it." Back in the courtroom, the arrangement was announced. Richard Harrington would plead no contest to a charge of unauthorized property use, would pay a significant fine to the state, and cover Anna's legal fees. The ring was irrevocably returned to Anna, with Richard relinquishing any claim. The judge accepted the plea deal, subjecting Richard to a period of probation to ensure no further incidents. Sophie Caldwell's claim that the ring was stolen thus resolved in a manner that shielded her from criminal liability as well. A hush fell in the courtroom as the resolution sank in. No jail time for Richard, but the damage to his reputation was incalculable. For Sophie, the legal risk ended, but the stigma of being the mistress who wore the wife's ring would follow her. And for Anna, there was relief that her property was restored and a measure of justice served, although the emotional wounds were deep. Outside the courthouse, a throng of reporters waited. Cameras clicked and microphones were thrust forward. Sophie managed to slip away quickly in a car arranged by her publicist. She wanted no further part in the spectacle, hoping to distance herself from the scandal and salvage her career. Richard and his lawyer fought through the crowd, refusing to comment. The media pivoted to Anna, who stood on the courthouse steps, ring on her finger. Her face was calm, though tears shone in her eyes. Sarah stood by her side as she faced the flashing cameras. In a measured tone, Anna stated, "I'm grateful the court affirmed my ownership of this precious ring, but this was never just about an heirloom. It was about respect, honesty, and betrayal. I hope to find closure now and move on with my life." One reporter shouted, "Will you forgive him?" Anna remained silent, stepping into the car that would take her away from the madness. In the weeks that followed, Anna proceeded with divorce. She hired top forensic accountants to ensure she received a fair share of the marital assets. The process was emotionally draining, but also liberating. She was determined to rebuild her life independently, pursuing philanthropic work on her own terms, traveling to places she had always wanted to see, and rediscovering her passions. Richard moved to manage the fallout in his business empire. Some partners distanced themselves from him, wary of negative press. Others stood by him, citing years of lucrative collaborations. Despite the financial hits, Richard wasn't ruined. He had too many assets and too much influence to disappear. However, his public image was irreparably tarnished. Sophie Caldwell resigned from her latest design projects. Her clients were understanding, But the media attention made it impossible to work without constant interruptions. She considered relocating to another city, maybe even another country, to escape the scandal's shadow. Whether she had truly been an innocent victim or an opportunist in denial was a question that would never find universal agreement. As for the ring, Anna placed it in a safer, more private location. Though it still held sentimental value, it also carried the memory of betrayal. Over time, she hoped the tarnish of the scandal would fade, letting the ring once again stand for the lineage of strong women from which she came. A year later, Anna was spotted at a charity gala in Paris, where she spoke eloquently about empowering underprivileged women. On her hand shone the famous heirloom, now a silent testament to her resilience rather than a relic of heartbreak. The ordeal, painful as it was, had honed her strength and reminded her that true worth can never be stolen or carelessly given away. And so concludes the scandal that shook New York's elite: a stolen ring, a crumbling marriage, and a courtroom reckoning. Anna Harrington walked away stronger, her dignity intact, while Richard's legacy lay tarnished. Sophie Caldwell, once swept up in a web of promises, became a reminder of how quickly it can all unravel. If this story captivated you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more jaw-dropping real-life dramas. Thank you for watching.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.